Underage girls and children were exploited for their harsh circumstances and their need for money in exchange for satisfying the whims of those with influence and authority. They were sexually exploited in the most horrific ways, and some of them ended their lives in the prime of life. A remote island called the Island of Pedophiles was a scene of crimes and hid much of human ugliness over the decades. So what do we know about the case of the American billionaire Jeffrey Epstein and his shameful reputation that haunts heads of state and celebrities? Although several years have passed since the death of American billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, who passed away after ending his life in prison in 2019 before being tried on charges of exploiting minors in sexual cases, talk about his case returned to the forefront of international news platforms again after the federal court in New York revealed official documents that included new details and the names of a number of those involved with him in the famous case, the Island case, including former presidents, businessmen, and celebrities. To begin, let us get to know Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein was born in 1953 in New York to a middle-class family. He was gifted in mathematics. Although he did not complete his university education, he was able to get a job as a mathematics teacher for 2 years in a private school in New York, in the mid-1970s. Jeffrey Epstein's journey to wealth began when the father of one of his students offered him to work for him in his financial institution. During his work in this institution, he assumed the task of serving major businessmen and investors and advising them on ideal investment areas. In 1982, when he was 29 years old, he founded his own company specialized in the field of investment management. Jeffrey had high charisma and intelligence that enabled him to attract the richest people around the world. Among the actions that added sparkle around him and distinguished him and showed him more was that when these rich people wanted to invest their money with him, he would not accept an investment of less than $1 billion. Within a short period, he owned the most expensive and largest property in the heart of Manhattan in New York, consisting of 9 floors on an area of 50,000 square feet, in addition to a number of mansions in Florida and New Mexico and an apartment on the upscale Foch Street in Paris. But his most prominent property was his private island in the Caribbean, Little St. James Island, as he used to call it, or as the Americans called it, the Island of Pedophiles, which gathered world celebrities, including businessmen, politicians, and artists, for years, and was a witness to the largest sexual scandals in modern American history because of the number of those involved in it and their characteristics. Allegations about Epstein's sexual behavior with underage girls began to surface in 2005, while the accusations concerned about 40 teenage girls. Then Miami District Attorney Alex Acosta agreed to a plea deal with the man. In 2007, Epstein then pleaded guilty to prostitution charges and not federal crimes. He was sentenced to 13 months in prison and was required to register as a sex offender. One of the complainants said that Epstein forced her to have a sexual relationship with the British Prince Andrew, which the prince denies. Despite all this and his conviction for sexual crimes, Epstein continued his tumultuous life, traveling on private planes between his hometown New York City, South Florida, New Mexico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Paris. Epstein was arrested again in July 2019. When the Manhattan District Attorney's Office accused him of enticing and recruiting underage girls to engage in sexual acts with him in exchange for giving the victims hundreds of dollars in cash. According to the prosecution, Epstein paid and created a wide network of victims under the legal age to exploit them sexually, crimes that carry a penalty of up to 45 years in prison if convicted. But the billionaire confirmed that he was not guilty and also offered about $100 million to release him on bail and requested house arrest with a security guard that he would pay for, but the judge refused. After Epstein's arrest, some details began to emerge about his mysterious life. An Austrian passport with his photo but with a different name was found. The authorities also found diamonds and money when they searched his home in Manhattan. But the strangest thing, according to a report issued by The Times, is that Epstein wanted to create a human race by combining his DNA with another DNA he obtained from women by fertilizing a woman in his large farm in New Mexico. Epstein was romantically linked to Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of the late British media mogul Robert Maxwell, who was convicted by an American jury in 2021 on charges of exploiting underage girls for sex trafficking and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As a result of continuing reports against him, Jeffrey was arrested again in 2019 during his return from Paris on his plane. Before his trial, he committed suicide in prison in New York on August 10 of the same year, which led to the dismissal of the public rights suit. Epstein's continued connection with wealthy and powerful figures in the United States and abroad prompted doubts about his suicide, but the FBI concluded that he committed suicide and that his death was not the result of a criminal act. And last June the Ministry of Justice confirmed the FBI's findings regarding his death. Documents revealed in the first week of 2024 revealed the names of about 170 people, including politicians and celebrities, who had a relationship with Epstein. This revelation comes within the framework of a defamation lawsuit filed by American Virginia Jeffrey against Epstein and his former lover and partner, Maxwell. Who are the most prominent figures whose names appear in the documents? One of the girls, Virginia Jeffrey, who worked for Epstein, accused British Prince Andrew of sexually assaulting her 3 times in 2001, when she was 17 years old, in London, New York, and the British Virgin Islands. However, the prince, who was stripped of some of his titles in the case, denied the accusations against him, but he reached a consensual agreement to pay her $13 million, according to the Daily Telegraph, which spared him a civil trial in the United States. In her testimony, Virginia Jeffrey denied meeting former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak during her time with Epstein, and Ehud Barak confessed to the Wall Street Journal, recently, that he was communicating with Epstein in New York, but he claimed that he had never met the businessman with girls, minors, or even adult women in an inappropriate context or behavior. One of the names mentioned in the documents is former U.S. President Bill Clinton, but without any clear indication to illegal incidents. And while Jeffrey said she did not meet Clinton, she testified that Epstein told her that Clinton liked them young. In an apparent reference to girls, Clinton repeatedly rejected all allegations that he was not involved in anything illegal. He communicated with Epstein for several years. One of the victims mentioned the name of former U.S. President Donald Trump in her testimony before the court. Trump once described Epstein as a wonderful man, but later said that he disagreed with him. Trump also spoke in 2002 about Jeffrey, saying, "I have known him for 15 years. He is a tremendous person to be with, full of pleasures. It is said that he loves beautiful women just like me, and he is partial to younger women. Jeffrey undoubtedly enjoys his social life." Virginia Jeffrey also testified that she once met Michael Jackson at Epstein's home in Palm Beach, Florida. But she added that nothing untoward happened with the icon. The late pop star, the name of the late physicist Stephen Hawking, was mentioned in an email that Epstein sent to Maxwell in January 2015, where he asked to provide gifts to one of the victims in exchange for her silence regarding the allegations that she had made against Stephen Hawking, and the email stated that Hawking participated in group sex parties for young girls. Criminal charges were only brought against Epstein and Maxwell, but certainly the repercussions and impact of the documents and names contained will be great, especially with the approaching U.S. presidential race, as Trump seeks to return to the White House.